Hi there, I'm Judy Holland, and welcome to Happy Nest, the podcast where you can hear the latest research and best advice for living well when your kids leave home. Join me as I interview experts and explore how to reinvent yourself during this critical passage. I hope you'll head over to judyhollandauthor.com and check out my new book, Happy Nest, Finding Fulfillment When Your Kids Leave Home. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Nest Show. I'm here today with Suzanne Degges-White, a professor of counseling, adult, and higher education at Northern Illinois University. She studies intimate relationships, including friendship and motherhood. Suzanne is also a blogger for Ecology Today. She is author of Toxic Relationships, Knowing the Rules and Dealing with the Friends Who Break Them. If you like what you hear, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe, rate, and review the show. It's easy to do on Apple Podcasts, or you can go directly to the podcast section of my website at judyhollandauthor.com. In her book on toxic relationships, Suzanne shows how broken friendships can be mended and bad friendships ended. As we enter the empty nest phase, we tend to have far less tolerance for relationships that vex us and fail to feed our soul. Do you have frenemies? Are you fed up with friendships marred by toxic behaviors? After your kids leave, it's the perfect time to prune away petty relationships and cultivate new ones with real staying power. What does it take to be a good friend? How can you identify bad friends? How do you move forward when a friendship turns sour? How do you decide when it's time to let go of a relationship that is bringing you down instead of keeping you afloat? Stay tuned as we discuss friendship with Suzanne. Suzanne and I are going to talk about how we strengthen our friendscape and when, why, and how we rid ourselves of toxic friendships. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Happy Nest. As we enter the empty nest phase, we tend to have far less tolerance for relationships that vex us and fail to feed our soul. Do you have frenemies? Are you fed up with friendships marred by toxic behaviors? After your kids leave, it's the perfect time to prune away petty relationships and cultivate new ones with real staying power. I'm here today with Suzanne Degges-White. She's a professor of counseling at Northern Illinois University. Suzanne studies intimate relationships, particularly women's relationships, including friendship and motherhood. She's the author of Toxic Friendships, Knowing the Rules and Dealing with the Friends Who Break Them. Ouch. Suzanne, welcome. I'm so glad you could be with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Judy. I look forward to our conversation.
Suzanne and I are going to talk about how we strengthen our friendscape. I borrowed that word from her book. And when and how we rid ourselves of toxic friendships. Suzanne, to begin with, why is it so critical in middle age, which is also tends to be the empty nest phase, to have a healthy friendscape?
You know, when we hit middle age or midlife, suddenly our children are gone. We're looking at ourselves in the mirror in a way we haven't before, and we're able to see ourselves more clearly often than we could when life was filled with the busyness of raising a family, getting started on a career, establishing our primary romantic relationship, if that's the path we've taken. And as we get to know ourselves better, we begin to recognize that there's one thing less time left than there was before we got to where we are. And we want to ensure that the relationships that we establish and the relationships we choose to maintain are as authentic and as rewarding and satisfying as any relationship could possibly be. We don't have time now for the fluff that we might have had before.
Right. And I think I remember, Suzanne, looking back at, at my adolescence or maybe right out of college when I was so interested to know just about anybody because, I was so interested. I felt like I could learn from everybody. But certainly I have certainly narrowed my scopes a lot. And I'm looking for soul. I'm looking for understanding. I'm looking for people with common ground because it simply makes more sense.
Absolutely. And it's that soul sister relationship. When I was doing interviews for my Friends Forever book, which preceded the toxic friendships,
Mm-hmm.
it was amazing how many women wanted to talk about, they feel like they had this soul connection, like not soulmates in the terms of romantic relationships, but soul sisters, that we get someone so deeply that so many things can be communicated without the need for words.
Right, right. And I've got one of those, right? Most of us might have one or two of those, right?
When we're very fortunate, we do.
Yep, yep.
Ideally, we've got someone who loves us no matter what.
Right. Unconditional, just like a mama.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Right. So what is a toxic friend? Can you give me a definition of that?
Well, typically, toxic friends are those friends we feel worse about having spent time with than we do feeling better.
Ooh.
Friendships are about our voluntary relationships. Friendships are supposed to feed our souls. But when we feel worse about having been with someone, it's usually a sign that there's something amiss with that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a
Yeah.
that's a red flag. We ought to if that flag waves, we shouldn't blame ourselves. We should be aware of it. We should keep our eye open for that.
Yeah, we really need to. And I think that's part of that midlife empty nest period where we're ready to let things fall away. As hard as it is to see your last child leave, it we're going into a phase in our life where we realize letting go can be so much more rewarding than holding on to things that have lost their value.
Right, and as you know, as I do in high school and earlier phases, we have kids involved in lots of activities, and everybody juggles their lives and pitches in, and so we have a lot of relationships during that time that aren't our with people who are not our soulmates, and as the kids go away, I think a lot of these tend to fall off with only a few of the more important ones remaining.
Absolutely. There's two types of support that we look for from our friends. One is instrumental support, and that's the person that will carpool with us. That's the person who's going to pick us up at the car dealer when we have to leave our car for service. Those are those instrumental tasks, someone that's going to lend us a little bit of money when we don't have the money for our child's field trip that morning and don't have time to write a check. Emotional support is that support for the people we like to be around. Emotional support are the people we can count on to be there when we don't need a thing, we need a person. And so as we get older, our needs for emotional support don't really get smaller, whereas instrumental support related to, like I said, the child rearing, the job, that kind of falls away. And so we are able to really focus on what relationship is bringing us joy.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And you're reminding me of this concept that a woman I'm going to interview shortly from Northwestern, Elaine Chung, who defined this idea of emotion ships. And she
Mhm.
says we need lots of different things in our lives, and we kind of need to take stock of the inventory out there. And some friends buoy us up when we're down. Some of us get us motivated. Some of us stretch us intellectually. People have many different abilities, and we need to kind of spread them out and recognize and appreciate people for those varying abilities.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about poison. What poisons or permanently fractures? I love a lot of the words that you use in your book, like fractured friendship, things like that. With some good alliteration there. What poisons or fractures midlife relationships? What are the really brutal offenses?
Well, I think the number one offense that can ruin a friendship is a lack of respect. And once respect, it's same thing in romantic relationships. Friendships are every bit as vital and as important to us as romantic relationships, or they certainly should be, because no one person can be all things to one person. But when you feel that your friend doesn't respect you, respect your time, respect your standpoints, that can really signal that a friendship has been poisoned. And
Mm-hmm.
when you lose respect, that's a big one. When someone breaks your trust, for many of us that can be an ultimate breaking point. There's this list of rules that have been around for friendships for quite a while, but the ones that have to do with trust, with being there for you, standing up for your friends, it's the ones that have to do with loyalty that really are the ones where some people draw the line.
So sometimes there's what might appear to the perpetrator to be a harmless gossip or passing on of information that was actually delivered in a confidential state. What
Right,
about
right.
that? Tell me about the dagger that might be and how that might terminally wound a relationship.
Yeah, that is one. When you reveal information, and so many of us carry so many things with it. We use our friends to lighten our burdens. And
Uh-huh.
when we've done something or something's happened, we often share it with friends because it is really true that there's an old saying, a burden shared is a burden halved. And all of us know the relief we feel when we tell a secret to someone else. It's something, either we got bad news about our health, our husband's lost his job, something like that. But when someone takes what we've shared in confidence and broadcast it, that can be the breaking point for many of us, because we put trust in that person. We felt that person was worthy of trusting with information we held sacred. And so when people do that, they've crossed a line. Not only do they show that we can't trust them, what also happens is we become less likely to trust other people. And it can make us, when we can't trust people, it makes it hard to establish really strong, close relationships, just in general. Not only do we have to, not only should a friend be trustworthy, but they also should be trusting of us. And when that trust is part of that loyalty, part of that sense of respect, that's a really tough one to get around, because once information is shared beyond the person to whom you told it directly, you can't undo that.
Right,
And I
right.
think that gossip piece, I think some of us, it's kind of funny because gossip was originally a very positive occurrence. People gossiped because it protected other people. Don't eat those red berries; it'll make you sick. Don't go around that lake at night because there might be some animal out there. It was like this prehistoric need to share information. But as we
Ah.
got more modernized, now gossip, when we're telling stories, what did you hear about Liz Taylor? She married her seventh husband. It's like, oh, so we're learning not only did Liz Taylor marry her seventh husband, but marrying a lot of people is bad. So gossip became a warning. Gossip was a warning. And now we kind of tell tales on people to share information, not so much as to warn others, but now in a salacious way. And so even good friends, some people can't be trusted with sensitive information for whatever it is about their character. They may be a rock solid friend in a million ways, but when you try to get them to keep secret, they just can't do it. So you have to make the decision, is this person and all they do for me worth the risk of sharing confidential information, or do I just need to be careful and not reveal things with this person that I wouldn't want shared beyond them?
But then you're kind of walking on a tightrope, and that's not a very
Absolutely.
comfortable situation. You're on guard, right?
You're on guard. You're on guard, and there's a list of 13 traits that make up a good friend, and not all of us are going to bring all these traits, but are the gifts I bring to our relationship, Judy, worthy of these little breaches? And that's why relationships are so, you might scratch your head, how are they friends? Because there's some need the other person has, the other person feels. And
Uh-huh.
so when it comes to those boundaries, and what's poison for me really might not be poison for you in a friendship.
Right. It just depends on the complex brew that we came out of
Right,
psychologically with
absolutely.
our families, whatever
Yeah,
I read that in your book, sort of
yeah,
whatever has shaped us creates needs and so forth. So
yeah.
so that's
But
yeah.
yeah, but some of the, like you said, breaking trust, that is usually one that's hard for people to forgive. Losing respect for another person, that's a hard one to forgive. Those are the ones that really have to do with, as I say, kind of ethical behavior.
Yep.
One trait, yeah, you want people that are fun to be around. That's an important trait. But if you're always down, but you're not breaking my ethical expectations, then, maybe it's not so big a breach. But when it comes to moral, ethical behavior in a relationship, that's where a lot of us feel that line should not be crossed.
Hmm. So how, Suzanne, how do toxic friends hurt our physical and or mental health? How do those
Yeah,
relationships, especially if they go on
yes.
long term?
Yeah, it's interesting that everyone thinks, "Oh, I've got so many friendships, and yeah, we get in fights, but that's okay." Friendships that bring discord really do. They can hurt blood pressure, they can hurt cardiovascular health in many different ways. They cause stress, so we can have the aches and pains that stress exacerbates. The stiff neck, the aching back, fatigue. Relationships can tire us out. Some of us, when we're after a big fight, some people are invigorated. Oh, I love having an argument. I love these debates. Other people get totally wiped out by these kind of
And maybe
things
can't sleep well.
and can't sleep. No, they could, yeah, poor relationships. You can lay awake worrying, what could have I said different, what I should have said. So, because human society is built on relationships. None of us could survive in a vacuum forever. We need people, and it's just the human condition is that we need relationships. And for some of us, especially women, friendships are so essential to our emotional well-being that when those are compromised, yes, our physical health suffers, our sleep hygiene is screwed up. We can get headaches, and we begin to emotionally we can feel depressed, we can feel very depressed, and we can begin to question what's wrong with me that I would let this friend do this to me, because women as a rule believe they can fix every relationship that's ever hit a stone in the road, because women feel that we're fixers and it's up to us to ensure relationships run smoothly. So when we feel that we've let one fail, we can beat up on ourselves and feel very guilty about that, which compromises our psychological well-being.
Hmm. Which leads me to another question: is how do you know when to let go of a toxic friend and when it's reparable, when you can mend the fractured relationship? What constitutes irreparable, we're done forever damage?
When you decide that what you're putting into the relationship is no longer even possibly going to be returned. And that sounds kind of very economic, but in relationships, we're investing in a relationship, emotionally in a relationship. And although we don't recognize it, as friendships build, I'll do a little bit for you, you'll do a little bit for me, I'll self disclose a little bit, you'll self disclose. And this kind of reciprocal relationship that is being built on emotional relational capital. And so when we get to that point, and once you're a good friend, you don't even think that there's I did this, you did that. Because when you're in an acquaintanceship has turned into a friendship, when you stop thinking about what you've done or what they've done to
You
build the
you stop
relationship,
you stop keeping score.
yeah, you can
You don't
stop
need to.
keeping score. You don't need to anymore because you've both shown you're invested. But when you feel like you keep giving and giving and you just don't have the energy to want to give anymore, it's time for you either to let that friendship go or to really have an honest discussion with that friend. And some relationships where you don't see the person very often, where they were friends of convenience, not friends of the heart,
Hmm.
those friendships can be easier to let go because you just kind of do that ghosting. You just kind of step back away from the relationship. You don't return texts. You don't really make efforts to get together. And in some relationships where that person lives in your building or that person's, you see that person at work every day, and you feel like keeping that relationship at least relatively healthy is important, then you might need to get your courage up and actually approach the friend and talk about what you see has been going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. These Aristotle, I recall back from my college days, referred to these kind of friends of convenience as friends of utility. And
Yes.
I remember at 19 sitting down and going over and over the same 2 inches, trying to
Yeah.
understand how Aristotle defined all the different the true
Yeah.
friends, the friends of utility, and it fascinated me even back then.
Yeah.
But
Because we
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, friends of convenience and friends of utility. It sounds cold, but that's that our instrumental support needs being met. So
Right.
it's yeah, not everyone is going to be a friend in my heart, but there are a lot of people I'm grateful are in my life.
But whatever kind of friend you have, you don't want a one-way street. And
No,
and there can be relationships in your life where it seems that one is perhaps, I guess the word would be selfish with time, with emotions, or maybe just very, very needy. What about, I
Right.
imagine, if a friend is really much too needy, perhaps that friend should see a counselor like you, or
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful way to put it. When someone is too much of something, then you know that you've got to help them find someone else to fill that need, whether it's neediness, whether it's just always down. When someone isn't functioning in a healthy way, it can be helpful to say, it looks like you've been having some struggles. You've been challenged lately by a lot more than what most of us have to face. Have you thought about seeking out some professional assistance? When someone expects us to be everything for them, that's a warning sign that they're expecting too much, and you've got to protect your own boundaries, no matter how much you care about that person, because none of us can be everything to anyone else, even in romantic partners and marriages. We can't expect one person to fill all our needs.
absolutely. And I have a chapter on suffocating the spouse and therefore the
Yeah.
need. That's Eli Finkel
Yep.
at Northwestern University. I interviewed him
Uh,
for my
yeah.
book, and I thought that was a really interesting idea. He did a lot of research on suffocation, and so basically we want to reach out and have different emotionships or friendships or people that can supply different needs, because no matter how brilliant and wonderful my husband is, he cannot tick off all the boxes. So I really of my emotional needs, so I keep a stable, it sounds
Yeah.
utilitarian, but it's not really. But I'm cognizant that, wow, that person really helps me inspire. I'm stuck on my book, but that one's making a film, and I'm going to talk to her, and she's going to,
Make
she,
you
she
feel better and
buoys
get you
me up.
moving. Yeah.
Right. And there are some friends that are exactly, my husband's not good on praise. He's just sort of,
Yeah.
I think his mother didn't praise him. He's not good on
Yeah.
praise. He just assumes that there's going to be excellence and that's all there is, and he doesn't
Right,
talk
right.
about it. But I like to be praised. And I have some
Yeah.
girlfriends that'll say, "Wow, that's amazing
Yeah.
what you're doing." And as ridiculous and trite as it is, I like to hear that. That makes me feel better personally.
Right, right, right. And you found the person that can fill that need, let your husband off the hook, and that relationship can stay strong because you know what you can expect from another person and what they're capable or not capable of giving. And in friendships where someone isn't capable of giving you what you need, sometimes you really do need to say, "This, we've got to find a way to kind of put an end to this relationship. We've got to find a way." And that letting go of friendships in this day and age, it's always complicated. You might have mutual friends, you might be on Facebook groups together, you might whatever it might be, and so being aware of the damage control that ending a relationship might require, just like friendships that have gone on for years and romantic relationships that have gone on for years, being aware of collateral damage and minimizing that can be really essential when you decide it's time to let a friendship go.
Let's talk more about that, and because you've got a bunch of interesting stuff in your book about that as well. Um, when you've just made the decision that this friendship, just at this particular phase of life, just doesn't work for any number of reasons, um, talk to me about the letting go of that friendship, because there could be many ways to do that, and some of those ways could bounce back at you in this day of social media, or could hurt you as you play back
Right.
that record of, we hurt ourselves sometimes with caustic words more than we hurt the other person.
Yeah, we do. And that's why, when we think about breakup speeches, sometimes it's better to rehearse it in your mind so that the right words are what will come first versus the wrong words. Because when we get incited or angry or upset, or we want to justify or defend our position, then we start reaching for those kind of base, emotion laden words. But if we've rehearsed what we need to say, it can help remind us, it's more fresh in our memory. Because when we go to that primal space of "you hurt me, I want to get back at you," that's when we say things we never should say out loud. We're going to think them, and we're going to tell them to our spouse or our bestest friend. But you have to be aware that anyone at any time could be recording what you're saying. They could do screenshots of whatever message you send. Even though we think midlife people are past that, they're not really past that. Not necessarily.
It's the screenshot. Yeah, it's
It's
all
a
about the
screenshot.
screenshot.
Mean girls. They may get gray hair and they may get wrinkles, but they're mean girls, and there'll always be mean girls out there. Just because it's the nature of the world, because we were all born different. Thank goodness. And so being aware, that's part of that collateral damage. And if you were in a bridge club, or if you're in a what is it, bunco, or if you're in a bowling league, whatever it might be, and there's someone who you feel you are going to scream every time you're around that person, or you feel like, I can't trust that woman, talking to your closer friends in that group is really key. Letting them know, I'm having a hard time dealing with my relationship with this person. I seem to be triggered by, I get upset. And using those I statements, letting your close buddies know, your close, girl squad know, which doesn't mean, it has political tinges now. I don't intend, I apologize.
We
Having,
all have to be so politically correct, and
we do.
I'm sitting not far from Capitol Hill, right?
Yes, yes, yes. When we let our close knit friends, close circle of friends, know, what we're feeling, and saying, I'm gonna talk to her about this because I can't let this go on, and I just don't want y'all to be surprised. If they're friends you're afraid you'll lose because of mutual splits, just like romantic relationships, the people you really value and you feel are your authentic friends, letting them know that there might be a rift coming up, let them know early so they can prepare, because no one likes to be blindsided by emotional friendship warfare. No one wants to be caught in the crossfire when relationships split up. And also be aware that you can block people. I mean, the whole media thing, we think, oh, we shouldn't have to block people when we're
You
52.
mean
Well,
unfriend, right? And I just
yeah,
recently learned
unfriend.
you can actually stop somebody's
Yeah, feeds
text
from
from coming
showing
in.
up.
I don't know how
Yeah,
to
you
do
can,
that, but I've heard about it,
but you
right?
can. Yeah, it's amazing. You can block them. You can block their Twitter. You can block their. I mean, all these wonderful things. That, in our world today, I think members of our government are showing us how to unfriend people in a million different ways.
I'm
They just
afraid so.
are. You block these things. We don't have the power necessarily to call on the Federal Trade Commission to block people or to argue, but we do have the right to determine who shows up in our social landscape and in our social media scape. Because social relationships at midlife should be the ones that feed us, that nurture us, that help us to be better than who we even think we might be. And when the relationships that are requiring us to spend a lot of negative energy worrying over, trying to correct, it just doesn't make sense, because now is a time when we can recreate who we are based on who we know ourselves to be, not who we were as, John and Jimmy's mom, or career. You can recreate who you are. You can become more comfortable. We do become more comfortable in our own skin. Empty nests are tough enough when suddenly you're looking at this person you said you'd love forever, and you're thinking, oh my God, how can I love you when our children are gone? How can I love you when you're retired and you're always home? All these things that go through our head when we make social friendships, which are our family of choice, which are totally voluntary, mutual relationships. They should be the healthiest, rewarding relationships they can be. And so we should just not spend time worrying about problems we know we can't fix.
Right.
Because if a friend doesn't admit there's an issue, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to convince them until they're ready to be convinced.
You just reminded me of the one of the former British Prime Minister's wife. It's in my book. Famously said that I married him for better or for worse, but not for lunch after her
There we
husband
go.
had retired. Because when
Absolutely.
things shift, it just takes a lot of adjustment, and kids leave. There's
Yeah.
a lot. This is a mega transition in the empty
It is a
nest.
mega transition. It really is. And I think that because, it's what is the third act or the midlife? I mean, now that life expectancies move much beyond the early 40s, when you say for better, for worse, until death can be, a lot longer than it used to be.
Right, right.
And so trying to work on that one relationship, that one, the one, that one you've sworn to, that one you've got this license to get into, that's one thing to work on. But when you've got friends that are just pulling you down, that you see their text, you don't want to return it, they want to meet up, and you're quote unquote always busy. Everyone knows that's code for you just don't. I'm not at the top of your list, and that's a way to kind of start saying, I'm just too busy. I'm too busy, and people stop calling. So there's some gentle ways to back out of toxic relationships, or you can make an appointment somewhere neutral to discuss the relationship. And so if there's issues, you can clearly communicate using I statements, all that couples communication language you learn that in books, learning how to talk to your spouse, and using that healthy I statement, taking ownership. That's another way you can confront toxic friendships. Or you can just, like I said, you can kind of just let people know that you're going to be backing out. You're not going to show up at as many events where this person might be, and do that in a more subtle way. But you have the right. Friendships are mutual, friendships are voluntary. And when a relationship no longer works, it's okay to find a way to correct it or to excuse yourself from that relationship.
Right, absolutely. So just wrapping up here, this has been wonderful, and we've benefited from all your years of in academia and studying the responses of people. So just recapping, wrapping up. What, just off the top of your head, what are your top tips for strengthening our friendscape as we're empty nesters? We're a little bit older, we're more discerning, hopefully we're wiser, and we want soul and meaning. And when the kids leave, it really is a kind of jolt and an awakening, and we want something real. How do we do that?
One, be honest with yourself. Be willing to see the sides of yourself that when you were younger you didn't have time to explore. Be authentic in your perceptions of yourself, and be authentic in who you bring to new relationships. You don't have to hide. You don't have to be someone others expect you to be now, because now's the time in your life where this is all you've got. You are who you are, and you might as well learn to like you and build relationships that reflect who you are, truly are, versus who you were in all these other roles. And also be willing to self-disclose and make the first move. Don't be so shy that you're afraid to reach out. Other people want to make relationships and build relationships. So go to a class on something you've always wondered about but never thought comfortable doing. I think in your book you talk about dancing. Try something that excites you, or something that you thought, I would never do that. Do something you said you'd never do, and be willing to be a beginner and a learner. Because when you build relationships with other people who share your interests, those are the ones that will give you something to come back to and connect to as you get older.
Right.
So the activity and interest friendships are the very best, because they'll endure.
And those are common ground. And if you go somewhere where you genuinely want to be, that location, that activity is going to attract others who are similar to you in many ways, and that will provide comfort.
Absolutely. We find friends through propinquity, which is proximity, through shared activities and shared life stage. And so midlife is a wonderful time to get to know the people in your community who share your interests and who are going through the same life stage, and get to know people who are younger than you, older than you. Go to groups that have people across the lifespan. Don't assume everyone's got to look like you and have 2.3 kids anymore. Get to know people who are different from you. And that's a great way to strengthen your friendships, because you're not coming in with expectations of what they can do for me, but you're coming into friendships with expectations of, I wonder what fun we can have together.
That's wonderful. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for making time for our Happy Nest and our Happy Nest listeners. And I have learned a lot from this past half hour. And I will, let's keep in touch and see what other common ground. We've got some common ground. We both like this subject. And let's, so
absolutely.
There's a basis for friendship right there. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Judy, so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning into my Happy Nest podcast, where we explore how to get the best out of the empty nest. I hope you'll subscribe, write a review, and reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Check out my website, judyhollandauthor.com. Have a great day, and remember, make it happen.